We arrived in Darwin by ship on the 20th of May 2021, our first visit to the city. We'd been travelling up the coast of northwest Australia for 10 days and had seen few signs of civilization. Indeed, Darwin was the largest city we'd seen since Perth, more than 4,000 kilometres south. Darwin is a small town of just 130,000 people and a long way from the rest of populated Australia. It's right on the edge of our vast continent, yet close to the teeming islands of Indonesia and other parts of Southeast Asia. Darwin does boast some high-rise buildings and some nice hotels, but they're nothing compared with Singapore, just 3,350 kilometres away, much closer than Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, or even by road to Brisbane. Compared with all the other state capitals in Australia, Darwin is hot, with an average temperature the whole year round of 27 degrees and daily maximums in many months of over 30 degrees, compared with an average of 15 degrees in Melbourne. The Botanical Gardens of Darwin contain many plants and birds that cannot be found in other parts of Australia. The orange-footed scrubfowl scratch for insects in the undergrowth. The forest kingfisher looks for food on the ground, then perches on the branch of a tree. This is the only Australian capital city where boab trees grow, trees built to thrive in intense wet seasons by storing water in their thick trunks, enabling them to survive long, hot, dry periods. People find Darwin hot, so there's been some experimentation with shaded roads and parking spaces. The great canopies do keep some sun out. In other parts of Australia, when it gets hot, people gather on the beaches and cool in the water, but not so much in Darwin. The shoreline near the city has great cliffs covered in thick vegetation. Other parts are rocky. One has to go north from the city to Lee Point to find vast expanses of sand. But even here one has to be careful, for great saltwater crocodiles live in the sea. The birds like the area, however. We watched a brown bittern here. We also went up to the beach at Lee Point one evening to see an eclipse of the moon. It was very pleasant watching the sun descend and the super pink moon gradually eclipsed by the earth. Aboriginal people have lived in the area for millennia. They traded with the Macassans from the Sulawesi region of Southeast Asia, and hundreds of years ago, their trading routes spread right across the continent of Australia from the Darwin area. Even in Aboriginal times then, Darwin was a trading port with Asia and the door to the rest of the world. Paintings in the Museum and Art Gallery of the Northern Territory paid some tribute to their great and ancient culture. This is a depiction of the ancestral rainmaker, Kurtal, painted by Darwin Downs, a custodian of Aboriginal ceremonies and songlines. And here are representations of the Wodjina, a creator spirit. Sometimes the Aboriginal people decorated pearl shells, as shown here. Other Aboriginal artists have replicated some of their ancient petroglyphs and rock art onto canvas. Another ancestor is symbolised in this tawny frogmouth, standing as a sentinel to the waterfront area. Apart from Dutch sailors who sailed along this coast in the 17th and 18th centuries, the first European to reach this area was the explorer Ludwig Leichhardt, who came here in 1845. Europeans first settled here in 1869. In the 1870s, a telegraph link connected Darwin to the rest of Australia, and by 1872 the link was made with the rest of the world, allowing instant communications between Australia and London. Lyons Cottage was the home of the management of the undersea cable from 1925 to 1942. In 1871, gold was found near Darwin, and this accelerated the growth of the city. And from the 1880s, pearling was developed in Darwin. The first pearl farm in the Kimberley was established in 1960 and operated from Darwin. Near the port is a building known as Brown's Mart. It was originally built in 1885 as a warehouse for V.L. Solomon and Company, a shipping and importing company that remained here until 1936. Darwin saw the arrival of the first aircraft into Australia from Europe. The plane was one of 6 which took off from London for the race. Leaving on the 12th of November 1919, after many adventures, it arrived in Darwin on the 10th of December. 4 other planes crashed. 1 other plane completed the journey the following year. The fact that Darwin was the first stop to Australia from Asia became very apparent in 1942 when 188 Japanese bombers attacked Darwin Harbour. It was the first of many raids. More than twice the number of bombs were dropped on Darwin than on Pearl Harbor. More than any other part of Australia, Darwin was directly involved in World War II. Forces were moved here from other parts of Australia. Large bunkers were built into the sides of the hill in the Charles Darwin National Park. A memorial is built in Bicentennial Park. Soldiers on the ground and airmen in the skies fought back. Remnants of a Japanese plane can be found in the Aviation Museum, along with planes used by the Allies to retaliate and bomb the Japanese. Darwin was devastated by a cyclone on Christmas Day 1974. There's still many signs of the devastation of that day, such as the ruins of this town hall. The hall was opened in 1883 and the venue of many social events and activities in Darwin, and has been left as a reminder of the power of the cyclone. Since then, Darwin has largely been rebuilt. Of the Anglican Cathedral, only the front porch survived the cyclone, and a new cathedral has been built behind it. One building that did survive was the Reserve Bank, built in 1967. It became the government headquarters for the recovery and is now the Government Tourist Information Office. Government House is the oldest house in Darwin and has survived all the city's turmoil. Being so far away, the Northern Territory had its own administrator, come governor, since 1871. It was overseen by South Australia from 1860 through to 1911, when it became the responsibility of the Commonwealth Government. Finally, in 1978, the Northern Territory was granted its own government with a legislative assembly led by a chief minister. In 1994, it sat in its own Parliament House, a spectacular new building. The Supreme Court uses one side of the building, which stands strong and ready to face the future. Darwin remains a relatively small, isolated outpost of Australia, but an important stepping stone to Asia and the rest of the world.